Hello everyone, I'm Jayashree. Welcome to my channel and to this tutorial for the Crochet Ruffle Sleeve top. So for this tutorial, I'll be working the top using my own body measurements, but I will show you how to take your body measurements so that you are able to work the top to your own size and body type and to the fit that you'd like it at. I will, however, provide you with a shoulder-to-shoulder measurement, which I got from the Craft Yarn Council website. You could choose to use that measurement, which is a standard measurement for your sizes extra small, small, medium, large, and so on. Or you could take your own shoulder-to-shoulder measurement, and I will provide a clip showing you how to. For this tutorial, I'll be using a natural cotton double knit yarn, which would be the same as a light worsted. It's just that it's in a natural cotton, and in this case it's 100% combed mercerized cotton. The recommended hook here is a 4mm hook, and I'll stick to the recommended hook. I have used a different cotton yarn making this same pattern. It was a 4-ply, which is thinner than the double knit or the light worsted. The recommended hook was a 3mm. So if you do decide on a different weight of yarn, I suggest that you stick with the recommended hook as listed on the label. So here I have the exact same top that I worked using the 4-ply yarn, and well, you can see that it's thinner than the double knit. It's also 100% cotton, and it was a combed mercerized cotton. So as I said, the hook is important. I would suggest when using a different weight of cotton yarn, stick with the recommended hook. Here I kept the recommended hook for this top that I worked, which was a 3mm hook, and the result was the same. I used the same shoulder-to-shoulder measurement. I noticed that my foundation chain was longer with the 4-ply yarn than it was with the cotton yarn, but with the end result, the size was the same, is the same. So yes, that's the only thing to remember. If you're working with a different weight of cotton yarn, I suggest you stick with the recommended hook that's on the label. This top is worked using the top down in the round method. We begin at the neckline, working down the yoke, continuing to the body of the top, and then we lastly complete the bottom body of the top, this little ruffled part, which is very similar to what we've done for the yoke. So this pattern is an easy pattern. If you've crocheted things like hats and scarves, you would definitely be able to crochet this top. Yes, that's it. Let's begin. Hope you enjoy this tutorial. Begin with a slip knot. So for my foundation chain, I'll chain a length of chains that's double the length of my shoulder to shoulder measurement, as was seen in the clip before. So to chain the foundation chain, it's yarn over and pull through. Just continue with yarn over and pull through until you have the correct measurement. I've completed my foundation chain, and if I fold it in half like so and measure it, pulling the chain slightly so that it's nice and straight along the measuring tape, my chain measures 15.5 inches. That's my shoulder to shoulder measurement. Notice that I've pulled it straight along the measuring tape and my chain is folded in half. So that should measure your shoulder to shoulder measurement. The next step is to count the number of chains, making certain that your foundation chain is in multiples of 2. I have 137 chains, so I'll remove the 1 chain. Now it's 136, that's perfect, it's in multiples of 2. We'll now join the chain that's attached to the hook to the first chain. And to do that, make certain that this entire chain is not twisted. Then it's joined to the first chain with a slip stitch. Yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook. Round 1, chain 1, single crochet into that same stitch as chain 1, and we'll work single crochets into all the remaining chains. So to single crochet, it's insert your hook into the chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through 2 loops on the hook. So continue with single crochets to the end of the round. I'm at the end of round 1, having worked those single crochets all across, and I've got 2 more single crochets to complete the round. So to join, it's slip stitch into that first single crochet from the start. Round 2, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Chain 4 counts as a triple crochet. Into that same stitch as chain 4, we'll work another triple crochet. To work a triple crochet, it's yarn over twice, insert the hook into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So knowing that chain 4 counts as a triple crochet, I've worked 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch. Then it's chain 1, skip 1 stitch, and into that next stitch work 2 triple crochets all into 1 stitch. So that's the first triple crochet and the second triple crochet into 1 stitch. So my stitch pattern is chain 1, skip 1, 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch. Continue to the end of the round. I'm at the end of round 2 and I've worked those 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch. I have 1 stitch to go. Then it's chain 1, and here I'll slip stitch into the 4th chain from chain 4 to join. Round 3, We now need to get in between these 2 triple crochets from the round before. So to do that, we'll slip stitch once. So insert your hook in between those 2 triple crochets, pull up a loop and go through the loop on the hook. Then it's chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Chain 4 counts as a triple crochet, and in between those same 2 triple crochets from the round before, I'll work another triple crochet. So it's actually 2 triple crochets in between the 2 triple crochets from the round before. Then it's chain 1 and into the next 2 triple crochets in between those 2 stitches, I'll work 2 triple crochets. That's 1 and 2. Then the stitch pattern is chain 1. In between the 2 triple crochets from the round before, work 2 triple crochets. So that's 1 and 2. Continue with the stitch pattern to the end of the round. I'm at the end of round 3 and I've worked that last 2 triple crochets in between the 2 triple crochets from the round before. To end the round, it's chain 1, and into that 4th chain from chain 4, I'll slip stitch to join. Round 4, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Chain 4 counts as a triple crochet. So here we'll triple crochet into all stitches and into all chain 1 spaces. Continue with triple crochets to the end of the round. So remember, we're doing it into all stitches and into all chain 1 spaces. I'm at the end of round 4, working those triple crochets into all stitches and chain 1 spaces. So I've got one more chain 1 space. I'll work a triple crochet into that chain 1 space, and then it's to join, it's slip stitch into the 4th chain from chain 4. I've completed the yoke and it fits over the bust as you've seen in the clip just a moment before. We'll now mark off the back body, the front body, and the shoulders. So to do this, we need to fold the yoke in half at first and then again in half, which gives us a quarter of the yoke. And I'll begin by finding my start, which I see here by the tail end of the yarn. Bring the opposite end of the yoke over to meet up with the starting point. So we're now folding the yoke in half. You have to make certain that the yoke is folded exactly in half. I now have the yoke folded in half with both the sides from the start being equal around. I'll now fold it again in half, bringing one side to the other, and here you see my start is right at the folded edge. So I've got a quarter of the yoke in this folded layout. Now that I have my yoke folded, the measurement I'll be using is the one that you'll see in the following clip. So I've taken the measurement directly under my bust, and in my case I get 32 inches. I'll now divide the number that I've got, in my case again 32 inches, divided by 4, which leaves me with 8. So I'll further subtract an inch from that, which is 7 inches, and that just eliminates any stretch on the bodice part of the top. So to separate the yoke into the different parts, I now need to mark out the front body, the back body, and the shoulders. And here I'll be working on the side where I have my starting point, and you'll see that it's got 2 folds, and whereas on the other side I have 2 folds, but they're opened. They aren't joined as we see it on the side where my starting point is. So from my starting point, with the measuring tape and using the measurement that you got, in my case it was 7 inches, while turning the measuring tape to follow the curve of the yoke, I'll mark off that 7 inches on the first layer of the yoke. And by the first layer I mean this, the first layer. So I've marked off the 7 inches. With my remaining stitch markers, I'll follow that marking and I'll mark off the remaining 3 layers. So I've got all 4 layers marked off at that 7 inch or whatever measurement you've got. In my case I've got 7 inches, so here it is, I've marked it off. Now we'll open up the yoke. So here you see the start, and on either side of the start I have the 2 stitch markers. So this marks off, in between the 2 stitch markers marks off the back body, and on the opposite side there's the next 2 stitch markers. In between those 2 stitch markers marks off the front body, and on either side I have the shoulders or armhole spaces, and that will form the ruffle part for the sleeve. Again, fold the yoke in half, aligning the stitch markers on either side. And here you clearly see it, the back body, front body, and on either side the armhole spaces. We'll now move on to the body of the top. So round 1, it's chain 1, and into that same stitch as chain 1, single crochet. Continue working single crochets into all the stitches and into the chain 1 spaces to the first stitch marker. So I've single crocheted to that first stitch marker, and I've also single crocheted into that stitch marked by the first stitch marker. I'll now jump over to the second stitch marker, skipping all the stitches in between because that is our armhole space. And to do that, you can turn your yoke, making certain that this armhole space faces towards you, and it's a single crochet into that stitch marked by the second stitch marker. So continue with single crochets into all stitches and chain 1 spaces to the next stitch marker. And here we've joined the front body to the back body. I've single crocheted to the 3rd stitch marker, and I've worked that single crochet into the stitch marked by the 3rd stitch marker. Again, I'll join stitch marker 3 to stitch marker 4. To do that, turn the yoke, making certain that this armhole space faces towards you, and then it's a single crochet into that stitch marked by the 4th stitch marker. Continue with single crochets into all stitches and chain 1 spaces to the end of the round. And here we've joined the next armhole space. I've completed round 1 of the body by slip stitching to join. So now we'll work the body, part of the body, using the stitch pattern. So round 2, it's chain 1 into the same stitch as chain 1, single crochet, into that same stitch, half double crochet, which is yarn over, insert the hook into that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook, and into that same stitch we'll work a double crochet. So we've worked 3 stitches, a single crochet, half double crochet, and a double crochet. Then it's skip 2, 1, 2, and into that next stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet, all into the 1 stitch. Again, skip 2, 1, 2, and into the next stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet, all into the 1 stitch. Continue with the stitch pattern to the end of the round. Let's skip 2, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet, all into 1 stitch. To end round 2 of the body, I slip stitched into the single crochet from the start to join. Once you've completed round 2 of the body, you can fit on the piece to make sure that the fit is correct. So if you feel that at the body, from below the bust, you'd like it a bit looser or tighter, you would have to reopen those 2 rounds, and you'd have to adjust your stitch markers. And the way to do it is, well, I wouldn't remeasure. I would just move my stitch markers inwards, a few stitches inwards. That means I'd move it 2 or 3 stitches inwards for a tighter fit, or maybe just 2 or 3 stitches outwards for a looser fit. So I'd adjust my stitch markers and I'd rework round 1 and round 2 of the body. And that just helps us get our fit at the bottom of the body correct. So I've continued on with the pattern, and I've repeated round 2 of the sedge stitch pattern that I worked. So the sedge stitch pattern is a it's a 1 round repeat. So you just continue with your chain 1, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet, all into 1 stitch, and then it skip 2 stitches, and it's a single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, all into 1 stitch, and at the end it's slip stitch into the single crochet to join. So I've completed the body part of my top, and I worked to a measurement of 7 inches. So here you'll decide whether you want it longer or shorter. And let me tell you, if you do decide to end the top here, it makes quite a pretty cropped top. So I've ended off the stitch pattern, and my top ends right just below the waistline, and then I continued with the pattern. I'll call it round 1 for the bottom body of the top. So for round 1 here, I chained 1, single crocheted into the same stitch as chain 1, and I worked single crochets all across into each stitch. I then slip stitched to join. From round 2 onwards, it's a repeat of what we've done for the yoke. The only difference in round 2 is I chained 4 and triple crocheted into the same stitch as chain 4. I then chained 1 and I skipped 2. So that's the difference. Whereas for the yoke, I've been skipping 1. Here I skipped 2 stitches, and then I worked the pattern again with 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch, chain 1, skip 2. 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch, chain 1, skip 2. And that's just that if I were skipping 1 stitch, it would just create a very big flare here, which I want, and I want it to gradually flare out. So that's the reason for skipping the 2 stitches here. Round 3 for the bottom body of the top was a repeat of round 4 for the yoke. So here I chained 4 and I triple crocheted into all stitches and into all chain 1 spaces. Round 4 and round 5 is a repeat of round 2 and round 3 of the yoke. For round 4, I chained 4, triple crocheted into the same stitch as chain 4, chained 1, skip 1, 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch, chain 1, skip 1, 2 triple crochets into 1 stitch. So that was round 4. Round 5, I slip stitched once to get in between the 2 triple crochets from the round before. I then worked a chain 4 and a triple crochet in between those 2 stitches. Then it's a chain 1 and 2 triple crochets in between the next 2 triple crochets, just as I had done for round 3 from the yoke. Then round 6 again is a repeat of round 4. Round 7 and round 8 is a repeat of round 2 and round 3 again. So you continue repeating the pattern until you have the length you want. I've just repeated what I've done from the yoke here. So, and I've stopped at round 8. You can further the stitch pattern to get the length you want. It's just that to lengthen the top from now onwards, I wouldn't work around 4 repeat again. I just continue with the round 3 repeat from the yoke again. So that would just be the slip stitch to get in between the triple crochets, and then it's 2 triple crochets in between those, with followed by a chain 1 in between. So that's the stitch pattern I'd use from now onwards to lengthen the top. You can fasten off, cut off the excess yarn, and weave in all those ends.